Really struggling with everything and thinking, like, I just don't want all of this, the enormity of all of this. I had to be really sociable with lots of people, and I was so tired. I was like, I'm struggling to pay people, I'm struggling to balance everything, and I'm having to be happy and serve people. And I did start looking to see what other jobs, and I genuinely did look. There was a job in a mortuary.
Wow. Hello and welcome to the Mum Means Business podcast, where we shine a light on inspiring women who have one thing in common. When they're not managing tantrums, homework, PE kits and play dates, they are busting their gut to create something from nothing, to turn their passion into a thriving business and build a better life for themselves and their families. We dig into what motivates devoted mothers to pursue entrepreneurship and how they integrate their work and family life. I'm Victoria, your host, and if you're an ambitious mum in need of some solidarity whilst navigating the messy middle of making your big dream a reality, then stick around. This is for you. My guest today has worn many hats in her career, from sign writer, photography lecturer, creative director, and more. Never one to shy away from a good idea, she's invested her time and energy in building something from nothing several times. I first met her in London on a workshop over a decade ago when we were both in the relatively early stages of building our wedding photography businesses. And my first impression was that she was infinitely cooler than I was. She just looked like an artist. Kate Rossin has an appreciation for all things creative, from the art of crafting the perfect San Francisco sourdough to traditional printmaking and championing photographers in the gallery space she created in her hometown of Coventry. With two gorgeous boys and arguably the best husband in the world at home, hi Kev, Kate is now very much in her mum phase, but my sense is that won't stop her chasing a new project. Are we gluttons for punishment? Let's find out. Kate, welcome to the Mum Means Business podcast.
Hi, Vic.
Hi.
That was quite an impressive intro. I wasn't expecting that.
It's all right. Well, it's nice to be flattered.
Yeah, thank
on
you.
A random Thursday afternoon.
Yeah.
And you are all of those things.
Things. Maybe.
Okay, let's go right back to the very beginning and talk about photography.
Okay.
So you've been taking photographs way longer than I've been taking photographs. And I think the business of photography and making money from photography is an interesting one that we both know a little bit about. Mm-hmm. But why don't you tell me how you first got into it?
Okay. So, I mean, we have to go back a very, very long time, because I first got into photography when I was about 11. I had a friend at school and I went around her house and her dad was like, oh, do you want to come and see what I'm up to in the kitchen? I was like, okay. And what I kind of then walked into was a dark room, and on their worktop they had all of the developing trays, and honestly I was just blown away. I can even remember the first picture that he showed me, and it was of a fence where they'd woven the hedge together, like natural hedge, I guess. And he'd done a close-up picture of it, of the pattern that it made. And seeing that picture come out of the water, that's what I thought it was at the time, in this dark room with red lights and stuff, just blew my 11-year-old mind. So I went home and told my dad, and he immediately got out his dad's old 35mm SLR camera and was like, you know, well, your granddad used to be really into photography, and this was his camera. And then my dad actually helped me set up a little dark room. Our art teacher had done a little bit of photography, and so I was able to do it during my GCSE, and that was all I wanted to do. I left school, went to college, studied photography, and then I went to Derby University to study photography there. I was properly obsessed.
Amazing to know what you want to do.
Yeah.
Amazing to know at that young age.
Yeah. I mean,
and that actually works out.
Yeah, I think it's very rare to find something that stayed with me for such a long time, and I became very possessive over it because it was kind of my whole life. It was everything to me.
Because you learn on film.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't learn on film. And I mean, there's not much of an age gap between us, but I didn't learn on film. And I was very much one of those photographers that came in that digital wave. So I remember my first digital camera that my parents bought me for my 18th birthday, and it was something like 2 megapixels. It was like a little Kodak point and shoot, and it was, in comparison to today's iPhones, it was absolutely shit. It was just hopeless. I remember film as very much rooted in my childhood, whereas you actually started your career shooting film.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think to see that transition must be really interesting. So did you feel, because I think it was around 2009, 2010, where this like massive influx of photographers came in, because suddenly taking a picture doesn't cost you any money. So you invest in your camera, but you're not investing in film. So once you've made that initial investment, every photograph you take is essentially free. And so everyone then thought, perhaps including myself, that you could make money easily. And then the wedding industry, you just had a ridiculous amount of, in inverted commas, documentary photographers just spraying and praying, taking thousands of pictures and hoping that like 5% of them came out all right. And did that frustrate you?
Massively. And I mean, and I was saying about how I was really possessive, and I look back now and I think, oh, when new technology comes out, and lots of people push back against it, and they say, oh, I'm going to lose my job, or I'm going to, and I was kind of one of those people, because I felt at the time like that's all I knew. Like I hadn't trained to do anything else, and I didn't have a backup career that I could kind of just go back to if the photography didn't work out. This was all I knew. And so then there was this whole influx of people who were doing it as hobbies, or just around their other work, and it was frustrating, because all of a sudden I had this like huge amount of competition. But actually what it did at the time was incredible, because it pushed me to kind of carve out a niche that I knew that when I looked at the photographs, they were my photographs. It was very much, this is the way I see the world. It took me a couple of years, to really understand that being surrounded by lots of other people was actually fantastic, because these people that would never have had the opportunity to be photographers and be incredible photographers, like, really kind of push what was out there. Yeah, it just wouldn't have happened. And I loved that. At the time, I didn't love it.
You were pissed off.
I was really
you were pissed
off.
You were cross.
Yeah. And it comes from, it was things that, about being scared. And it became, I think, I come from a really kind of like, working class family. And, we didn't have an art background. When you're working in the wedding industry, the more successful you get, the more you're working with, more excellent people. Yeah. And I always felt, I felt out of my depth with that. Whereas previously I was able to rely on the fact that I was skilled, but then you had lots of people who had, the vocabulary and the...
I feel like it's confidence.
Yeah, I think so. I think maybe more experience of kind of being in those situations. And I just really felt out of my depth, and I couldn't just rely on my photography anymore. It was about how to talk to people. It was about communication, and it was about, having similar experiences.
That's really interesting. I don't think we've spoken about this before, which is good, because we've spoken about, I feel like, almost everything else under the sun. Yeah. But that's such an important factor to take into consideration when you're starting a business. So when you first entered it, there were probably still a lot of photographers who were doing it the traditional way on film, and you didn't have to be so competitive. And perhaps in a strange way, perhaps there was just more respect for your profession. And then obviously when the market was flooded, people had so much more choice, and also like a change of style that comes obviously with digital, and a kind of American import of just a more informal, relaxed, fun approach. But really your social skills weren't that important when you started out. But when there's this massive amount of competition, then actually that became a thing. And then in business, I suppose in general, it is so much to do with how you relate to your clients. And if you want to make good money in wedding photography, you kind of are going towards the higher end. I think you start out and you'll just take any wedding, and actually you're honoured, because it is just a big deal for someone to trust you with that memory. But you quickly realise you're not going to have a sustainable business that way. And so you are kind of moving up into the higher end weddings socially. Yeah. And that does require a certain level of kind of social confidence. Yeah. Which I never really thought that you struggled with. I've second shot weddings for you, and you're always absolutely delightful and seem completely at home at every wedding.
I think it just took quite a lot of practice. And again, it was the confidence, and I second shot for some photographers who were doing those really big kind of high-end weddings, where I'd end up at Claridge's, and again, being able to experience that just gave me a bit more of a confidence boost. But I remember like the year that I first got lots of bookings. We did a wedding show at the NEC, and what we should have done was probably upped our prices as the days went on, but what we were offering was so different to everybody else, because the main competition, it was traditionally very male dominated, very kind of shouty, I love family photographs. Doing the formals is one of my favourite bits of the day. I love it. But I think lots of people had the recollection of being at weddings where you'd have some guy with a camera shouting at everybody to get into a certain position and all that kind of stuff. So
it's quite unfriendly, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. It wasn't very nice. And so I think it was predominantly female photographers who I think changed that. I mean, that was the big shift. And lots of brides obviously wanted that because, when they're getting dressed and they want all these beautiful pictures of them with their bridesmaids, but they're potentially in their underwear and whatnot, women are the ones that they really wanted to have around them at that time. And so being able to offer them that, plus something that was kind of very different to a very traditional way of approaching wedding photography, we booked up 2 years worth of clients at a very low rate. So cheap. And there was nothing we could do once we booked them. That's it, we were in. And those 2 years really taught me about weddings, because we photographed some incredible weddings in some incredible places, really high end, even though, our charge was quite small in comparison. And then we did the lowest kind of budget weddings. And I think those 2 years really kind of taught me how to work with lots of different people. So I think, it's
a big challenge. I actually think wedding photographers are warriors. I think in the world of photography, wedding photographers get such a bad rep, but to shoot a wedding, an event where you are dashing, at a moment's notice from light situation to light situation, your ISO's kicking up and down as the wind blows, at the cloud cover, then pouring rain, then bright sunshine, then in a dark church or a horrible reception room with a suspended ceiling and one quiet window in the corner.
You're giving me anxiety just talking about it.
But we did it, didn't we? And it's hard work, and the whole time you have to be delightful, absolutely delightful, which, of course you're going to be delightful. It's someone's wedding day. It doesn't matter whether they've spent 20 quid on a cake or £5,000 on a cake. It's their wedding day. It's important, and they're your client and you serve them. But it's a day, isn't it? It's a really, really intense day. So you hone your craft in those 2 years. And then in terms of your business model, how did that change after those 2 years? I presume you upped your prices.
Yeah, massively. And it was 2 years worth of hard graft with not very much to show for it, kind of, finance wise, but the experience it gave us, and also the access then to lots of other people, because we then go on and shoot a sister's wedding or somebody who, worked with
the word of mouth.
Yes, but during those 2 years was when I decided that I didn't want to photograph the way I was. There were lots of photographers and there was lots of competition, and it kind of felt like, who can create the most awe-inspiring wedding photograph? Who can create the most fun-looking picture? It was all these kind of really spectacular pictures that you would blow up and big and put up on the wall, and I felt there was just so much pressure to be producing that photograph that actually what seemed to then happen was that everything else got lost in it. There weren't the family formals because there wasn't time. Everybody was convincing couples that you don't want the family formals, that's the boring bit. You want to show everybody how fun you are and how, let's go and stand at the top of a mountain. And and when I look back on the photographs that are important to me, it's all the ones with my family. I want to see a picture that's got me and my nan and my mum and my sister. I want to see those pictures. And at the time, the person who I thought was doing the best photographs of people at weddings was John Canless, and I was just blown away by the way he captured people interacting with each other. And the big thing with him was that he was still shooting film, and I was just that's what I want to do, and I know how to do it. I know how to shoot.
Yeah, exactly.
So
you're at an advantage.
Yeah, and then I kind of, I was like, are you crazy? Why on earth would you want to spend loads of money on film? And also, weddings still terrified me. I'd still, wake up on the morning of a wedding wanting to throw up because
I think if I shot a wedding tomorrow, I would feel like that.
Yeah,
even with over decades experience, it's just such a pressurized situation. You cannot redo it.
Yeah.
It's now or never. You can't make a mistake. You just can't.
No, you can't.
It's a very anxiety inducing thing. And I think the whole day as well, you're running on adrenaline.
Yeah.
So if, one, it's really hard work. Two, the adrenaline, your nervous system is just in overdrive the whole day. Yeah. And then the come down is real as well. It's like relief and just like anxiety just oozing out of your pores as you drive home. Like, and then you're madly, frantically checking every card, every roll of film. And really, until you deliver the photographs, you're like, okay, you're done. And then you do it all over again.
Well, this is it.
So let's talk about money in a photography business. Okay. Did you make any? As a wedding photographer specifically?
Very little. Yeah. I think, because obviously, especially with the price of film, there wasn't a lot of money. Absolutely. I don't think I was ever at that point in terms of, as much as I loved photography, I just wasn't great at the getting myself out there and
marketing
doing
bit.
Yeah. I just couldn't, I found, talking about myself, I found it really difficult to, be like, hey, I'm great, come and book me. And,
I don't think it comes naturally. I mean, we can be terribly British about it. I just think that we find it awkward. And you have to develop your own style, don't you, of kind of putting that out there. But yeah, looking back, I would say that you weren't shouting about yourself. And they say, don't they, that social photography is 80% marketing, 15% running a business, and 5% taking photographs to make it work. And your photographs were beautiful. I mean, they still are, I presume. I haven't seen any of your recent work, but, I have confidence that that's beautiful too. I was in a position when I was shooting weddings where at the end, I was making money, but it was very much that time for money exchange. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't necessarily compensating for the fact that I would be in a car and travel the whole day before. And travel through the night afterwards often. They'd often find me asleep at Stafford services at 3 a.m. in my car because I just couldn't make it that last leg home. And all of those things were just not in there. And the editing. And I feel like really if I'd have worked out that time for money exchange, I'd have been on a really, really low rate if I'd have been honest about it. And so I think for me, the reason I stopped was partly having children, but also kind of exhaustion from it, and feeling like I'd lost that creativity, which, like you say, that that's a passion that you have, that you'd had since you were a child. What do you think were the reasons why you stopped that business? So,
I mean, the money side of it was one thing. I think if I'd have gone back to being a digital photographer, I probably could have booked a lot more because I could have reduced my prices down, and I think I would have had access to a bigger market. And film photography in the UK just wasn't really a thing. So people weren't booking me because I shot film. They were booking me because they liked why my pictures looked different, and that was because of the film, but they just didn't know that. So it was hard to kind of convince people that weren't booking you specifically for film why they should be paying, £1,000 more. For that privilege. But I just did not want to go back to being a digital photographer. That wasn't what I was interested in. And I decided to start a family, and that had been quite a long process for us. So I hadn't been able to get pregnant for many years. And in 2016, we started IVF, and we had one round, didn't work, and we abandoned it, and then we had another round and that worked, and I had my son Remy in August of 2017, and my mum and dad lived just around the corner, and the plan was that we wouldn't do multiple weddings anymore, of a weekend. It would just be the one, and my mum would look after Remy whilst we went off and shot the wedding. And we did that. I think the first one I did was maybe when he was 7 or 8 weeks old. It was quite,
That's so soon.
Yeah. It was really, really soon. And
how was that though? Because we've already said it's such a hard day. You're on your feet all day. I mean, after I had Alice, 7 weeks in, I'd only just started walking again. So I definitely was not up for shooting a wedding. Yeah. But how was that? How did you feel about doing that? Was it just needs must? You booked it That's
It
that.
was, yeah. And, my mum's like this amazing parent. Babies were her thing. And, and I felt completely at ease with her. I mean, I remember, she would send me videos of her bathing him. And, I mean, the problem as well, I was like having to like express and, any time. Yeah, it was just, but it worked.
Oh God,
It
Kate,
was
having
fine.
to express at a wedding. Like you just don't have, you could be called upon at any moment to go and shoot something. Oh, this is happening. Yeah. Can you just come? And any guest feels they're able to grab you and you jump to and you go. And fine, you can sort of schedule in, okay, well, I'll express during the wedding breakfast. So that's one. Maybe in the car between somewhere and somewhere.
Yeah,
but you absolutely cannot. Yeah, but you can't choose that for yourself. So that's having to work around that day's schedule.
Yeah.
Which is just an extra stress. Oh my God, Kate.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are lots of wedding photographers who've done it, but that's a lot and it's unspoken and you don't feel able to say, I'm sorry, I'm just going to have to take 10 minutes in the middle of your speeches because my boobs are leaking.
Yeah.
So I've got to figure it out.
Yeah.
That's so crazy.
I know. I mean, the main reason why we stopped was, and this is the bit I find as so heartbreaking, really, because everything had kind of slotted in together. Like, the business was doing really well. I think we'd found the way that we were going to kind of, manage it. And Remy was 10 weeks old when my mum found out that she had cancer. And then that was just everything just fell apart, really, because I just knew at that moment that whatever the prognosis was, this was not something that was going to work for us, because not only was she not able to look after him, and that wasn't the biggest thing for me. The biggest thing was, I don't want to not be nearby. Weddings, they're on certain days, they happen at certain times. Cancer doesn't, things go wrong and things happen and surgeries and treatments, and it was like no way that I wasn't going to be able to just drop something. And I would never want to put a bride or groom in the position where they were like, oh no, just go, but we understand because your mum's sick,
but also it's their wedding day, and
but it's their wedding day, so why so I was like, I would never have expected people to have forced them to have been kind, so literally once that happened, I was like, right, we're done, and it wasn't.
And that's life at play. That's real life. Mm-hmm. And this is the thing about business. Business is really, really important. It's the heart of everything until somebody isn't well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then you figure it out.
Yeah.
It goes to the bottom of the list.
And so alongside me being a photographer, I was also a photography lecturer. So I'd been teaching at university as well as FE college. So I was like, it's okay. I can, it was never full time. It was always kind of, hourly and paid lecture stuff. And I was just like, well, we'll just do that for now. And and it was literally overnight. We were just like, that's it. It's gone. So
and how did Kev react to that? At the heart of it is your business, and he was working at Coventry Uni at the time, so he had his steady income. I presume since it's Kev, he just was supporting whatever you felt was best for you.
Yeah. I mean, usual Kev, oh, you want to do that crazy thing at the same time as doing another crazy thing, whilst at the same time, having a new baby and all this. Okay. Wasn't that unexpected that something else would be on the horizon? I don't think it shocked him that much. Maybe not something on the scale that I ended up doing. So this is kind of the end of 2017. Big thing had happened in Coventry. Very surprisingly, I don't think many people really expected it to happen, but it won the bid for the City of Culture. When that happened, it kind of felt like it was the right time to do something that I'd had in my mind for quite a long time. Had this income, wanted to do something that was public facing. So we thought about what does Coventry have or doesn't have. It didn't have an open access darkroom at all, so it didn't have anywhere where you could go and process film or print. We also, I'd started screen printing, and I'd seen the link between what you could do with photographic images and screen printing, and was really interested in that. And I just thought, actually we could make this kind of open access studio space, darkroom with a shop space where people could potentially sell locally created artwork, whether it was photographic or printed. And so Print Manufactory, just became this really kind of like cool little hub where local photographers and artists could come and use the space. And we met some incredible people during that time. It was really, really enjoyable. But I don't think what we expected was to end up being somewhere where people just hang out and chat and talk about art, and it became less about the printing and the creating art, more, you know, kind of using it as a space to bounce ideas off each other. And so so that was really lovely. And then COVID happened. Yeah. You can't really do, you know, workshops and group things when there's a global pandemic going on. So studio closed, and we were then given the opportunity to move into bigger premises. I mean, and to be honest, I think we were at a point where we were like, this isn't going to work. You know, like, we invested a huge amount of money into it. It was a really, you know, it looked beautiful. You know, it was all birch ply, and it looked great. And, you know, we used to sell all the things that I loved. You know, it was great. But it was hard to make work, and it was hard to make work in a location we were in as well. It's in this creative village just on the outskirts of the city centre, and it always really suffered with footfall. But, you know, I think naively we were like, no, it's fine, we'll go in there, we're offering something so unique that, you know, it will drive footfall. But, you know, it's a hard gig. It hasn't got very good parking. People in Cov like driving a lot, so it's it was tough. But then there were a series of grants that became available to people that ran the village to invest in the arts, and we kind of went with a proposal for taking what we had with Print Manufactory and upping it into a community space, kind of taking on the positives that had come from using the space to talk with other artists and kind of really run with that part of Print Manufactory. So we lost the dark room, but we kept all our screen printing stuff, and we still did photography workshops, but we also opened like a cafe bar, and that was to kind of help fund the things that went on in the space. And we had a big exhibition wall, so we put lighting in so that we could put on some really interesting exhibitions. So not just from local artists, but we kind of like tried to get kind of lots of different things in from around the country. And that was common ground.
And it was awesome.
Yeah.
It was a very, very beautiful space. So when you set up Print Manufactory, you didn't necessarily expect that it would become this kind of hub of conversation in a kind of cafe society way. And all you've got to do really is inject a coffee into that.
Yeah.
And you've got what seems to make sense as a creative hub. Was that your vision for the space?
Yeah. I really wanted there to be a place where you could get, you know, not just coffee and not just kind of some nice food, but also be in a really beautiful place at the same time, and that wasn't a big chain. So there was that element to it, but then at the same time it was very much about being able to support a community of people. I think there was a lot of disappointment with City of Culture in Coventry. A lot of local people felt kind of pushed out and not included in what was going on there. And, you know, we just wanted to make sure that there was something afterwards, so that once that had gone, we were still there, we were still having those conversations, we were still doing stuff, making stuff, you know, collaborating with other people. And we collaborated with so many different groups of people, you know, whether it was musicians, you know, it's not all just visual arts. We had a license, so we were able to kind of put on nights where we had a group of people who, you know, encouraged new DJs who, you know, were doing this on their own in their bedrooms but never had the confidence to do it in front of the public. And then we had, you know, bands. We had our friend James, otherwise known as Funky Porcini, and he came with this crazy thing called the Laserium, which when he first started it looked like this massive meth lab. It was something like 200 lasers that he'd programmed, and it was all based on his own music. He was trying to find a way to almost do like a live show of his music. And so all of the lasers responded to different notes, and the bass changed mirrors. And so he had to write music that didn't just sound good, but it looked beautiful. That was really special. That happened quite early on when we first opened, and it really did feel like, you know, we'd created something at that point. I was really excited about what it was going to be able to go on and do.
And isn't that feeling, just take that, of starting something and it comes out of your head, you know, you want to create a space that on one hand serves the community, on another hand is beautiful and satisfies your attention to detail and serves good coffee and good food. What I feel is great about you is that you have a sense and actually an ability to make everything you do beautiful. Like, I've been to your kids' birthday parties, and honestly, the salads are something else. You know, you're not going to throw out a Costco sausage roll and a cupcake. Like, that's not you. You have a really aspirational head that you think, well, how good can we make this? And I feel like you bring that to everything that you do. And so that moment where you feel like you're gaining traction, you've got this idea, you've made it happen, but there's a lot of uncertainty at the beginning of a business. But then you have a night like that, say you did that first show,
Yeah.
and you're supporting someone in the community who has got their creative outlet. You're bringing people together. There's something beautiful happening, and there are lasers and lights everywhere, and the music is great, and the buzz, I imagine, is amazing.
Yeah.
Like, that is the fuel, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you're so excited about where this is going to go and the things that you can do. And I just think having that, it's not about the destination, is it? It's the journey, and it's those moments and that joy that you derive from it.
Yeah.
And you look around the room and you're like, we have done this.
Yeah.
And I wonder what else we could do. And it's so hopeful and kind of beautiful in itself. So then we talk about the challenges. So tell me about those.
So literally, as COVID was happening in March, my mum was told that her cancer was no longer treatable. And by the time we got to July, we lost her. And so that was incredibly difficult, because obviously you can imagine the lockdown part of it was like, well, I want to see you. Like, you've just had this awful news and we want to see you, but then we were being told we can't. And then we were being told that literally, if you go anywhere near somebody, they're going to get this thing and then they're going to die. And we already kind of been told that that was going to happen, but we didn't want it to happen any quicker. So we stayed away from each other for, quite a long time at that point.
Which is heartbreaking.
Oh, it was just the worst. It was just so hard. And, the people in the hospital were like, we would understand if you broke the rules and you saw each other, like, but at the same time, like, if your mum got COVID, we wouldn't treat her.
You can't have that responsibility weighing on your shoulders, can you? It's such a difficult position to be in, and you don't have any clarity necessarily on how long you do have. If you were told, if she's got a week, then sod all the rules, you just need to see each other. But absolutely awful. I can't imagine.
Yeah, it was really horrific. And at this point, I've got 2 children. So Ray hadn't turned 1 at this point, and there was a lot of stuff going on with him as well. So we had that we were dealing with, and Remy was just coming up to 3. And yeah, so Mum died in the July, and I think I had the opportunity to take on Commonground, or to go into the larger premises not long after that. And I think what I obviously did in hindsight now, I just think I just put all of my energy into it, like all of the stuff that was going on with losing Mum, and it just gave me something to focus on. And she'd always said, oh, you should open a coffee shop, you should have this, you should, you love cooking. I just kept thinking, oh, she would have loved this. She would have been here all the time. And I think that was kind of the driver for kind of doing that. And so I think I was just on that hamster wheel, for that first year. I turned 40 in the February during that big lockdown. We were still building the place, so eventually we get in there, but the lockdown rules were just so up and down. Like, we didn't know, like, it was restrictions on how many people could be in a room at any time. So we were kind of navigating that, because we'd never run a food business previously, and then we were having to then deal with this on top of it. But the first year was really good, because I think everybody was so desperate to spend time with each other and experience things. So like, they wanted to do workshops, they wanted to be with people, they wanted to look at art. So the first year was really good, but then year on year, you can see, it was just always really difficult. It was difficult with the footfall, trying to get people up to a space that wasn't in the city centre. There is affluence in certain parts of Coventry, but there's a lot of deprivation as well. We really wanted to work with the community, so we were really encouraging local people to use the space. So we would put on a lot of free events and things, but it wasn't necessarily bringing money in for us. And the parts of the city that maybe did have the money and the interest in the arts naturally were kind of just that bit too far away. So it became a real struggle to try and fund it just through the kind of F&B that we were offering. For the amount of footfall that we would get at the space, I think our rent was quite high. but it's everything that goes with it. You know, it's if you're open between 5 and 7 days a week, you've got to pay for staff, you've got to pay for, you know, all the things that happen, whether you've got anybody in there or not. And that's a very, very expensive thing to do.
Yeah, I feel like I have no inkling in this because obviously I'd never had any kind of like F&B or hospitality business of my own, but you hadn't ever done anything like that before.
No.
Was that quite a shock to the system to realise the overheads of staffing? You know, you could walk in and the place would be empty, but you know that it's costing you money.
Yeah.
When you go from like the wedding photography game, for example, what was that transition like from one business sector to another?
I think, I mean, I've only ever known it post-COVID, and, you know, hospitality still now is in a really, really difficult position. I think, you know, there's lots and lots and lots of places that are closing down. I mean, for example, in Coventry, there's lots of chain restaurants. Like the Botanist was one of the busiest kind of, you know, big chain restaurants, and always seemed very popular and appealed to a wide audience. That closed down the end of last year. You know, and you kind of think, you know, if places like that can't survive, little places like ours, you know, really struggle. And I just think what I always wanted to do was make it affordable for people. I didn't want to kind of just whack our prices up massively in order to make sure that it covered the fact that some days we wouldn't have a lot of people in. I just felt like I wanted to make it affordable for everybody all the time, because that was the purpose of the space. It was to make
and
it...
that's the social responsibility.
Yeah, that's it. And, you know, as much as, you know, charging £4 for a latte, you know, probably would have, you know, kept us in there for,
helped.
You know, yeah, like, but it wasn't why we had the space. The space wasn't a coffee shop, and it was just supposed to help.
So what happened to Commonground?
So the year before, we were in a really, really bad situation in terms that we had got behind with our rent. We were really struggling, and people, like, you know, everybody was kept saying, oh, you know, we love Commonground. I was like, well, you've got to come and use it. Like, you have to come and use this space if you want it to stay open. We had a phenomenal exhibition. I mean, it still blows my mind to think that we actually did it. So somebody that I've been collaborating with had said to me in passing, once we were talking about the original photographers gallery, and she said, oh, you know, this place always reminds me of it, I think, because of the way it was laid out. And we were just talking about how much we used to love that space, and she mentioned that she had this John Berger exhibition, and I was like, what, the John Berger? And she said, yeah, I've got like John Berger's words and John Moore's photographs, you know, well, maybe we could put them up in here. And so we put on this exhibition, which was based around their book, Seventh Man. And we kind of had this as a year-long project. So I think I had access to about 120 pictures, and I curated a selection. It's all about migration, which was kind of really important at the time, because politically there was a lot of talk about kind of migration, and a lot of negative information was coming out about that. So it felt like a really good time to do that, and open up kind of discussions with the public. I've always had this thought about people being able to access high-end art, and one of the things that I always feel is that there's a lot of people in Coventry who probably would never set foot in an art gallery. I can tell you there's probably members of my family who would be like, and the reason why is because they will be scared that somebody would ask them what they thought about something. And the idea of people being put off because they are intimidated, and I've been there, you know, when we talk about working in
the
different
social anxiety,
you know, of not being able to say the right thing to the right people.
Well, you're worried it's not your world, and it's misplaced. And I think, especially where art's concerned, it's so subjective. Art is for everybody. And I feel like every project and everything that you've done at Commonground, that's the foundation of it. It's trying to remove the barrier to entry. And trying to level out the playing field. You can come and look at a photograph on the wall, and you can pay, you know, £2 something for your latte. It's okay. You are welcome. Come in. But do you think people, even though that was your ethos, do you feel like people still felt that it wasn't quite for them?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, it still had a hipster vibe. Like, you know, it had a specific audience that was, you know, I would say, you know, it's white middle class. That's not what we were aiming towards, and we worked with a lot of different groups, a lot of young people, and, you know, tried to put on lots of different things in order to kind of make that audience more diverse. I was kind of influenced by, you know, really cool kind of shops and spaces from places I'd been to outside of Coventry. I was like, no, do you know what? People still need to be able to think they can just come in, like that we were always going to be welcoming for, you know, for everybody. And
it's amazing the little cues stuff white people like. And the list, I mean, I'm sure on it is stationery, houseplants, and black and white photography. I don't know. But the thing is, when you actually look at stuff like that and you look at your shop front, like, it is your shop. I mean, the whole space they created was beautiful. But yeah, it's having that awareness and stepping into someone else's shoes. And it could be age. It could be like somebody in their 70s might feel it's not for them. People in their 30s, 40s, 50s having their cortado and a huge Monstera plant in the entranceway. And you're thinking, this is not for me.
Yeah.
And those cues exist. And I think as business owners, we have to kind of be aware of that all the time. Even in what I do in family photography, I am very mindful that a lot of my portfolio, because I live on what they deem as white Wirral, which I only found out was a thing like way too late in life, is of white people. So somebody looking at that, even online, wherever they might live, is going to be thinking, well, is this for me? And I want it to be for them. I want it to be for everybody. But we have to be so mindful of the messages that we're sending.
In 2023, end of 23, we nearly lost it, and we did a crowdfunding. We raised a phenomenal amount of money in like 20 days or something. I think we raised kind of nearly £8,000. We had some incredible artists support us. So we had George Shaw, who's kind of probably one of Coventry's kind of most famous artists. He was a Turner Prize nominee several years ago. Really great guy, really lovely. And he donated one of his prints to the crowdfunder. So we had people all over, kind of supporting us with that. And so that was really great. And it just gave us that bit of a lifeline. So we stayed open for another year with very much that idea in our heads, which was about kind of making the people that came to the space more representative of where it was. And how do we go about doing that? How do we get more people here? How do we get... And my kids go to the schools around the corner, and and their friends are the people that live here, just like we live here. I mean, we only live around the corner from it. So it was a really important thing for us. And I think if we've maybe have got some of the grant funding, I think we probably could have carried on. But it just wasn't meant to be. And that, unfortunately, that's what happens with grant funding. It's, you can get it and that's it, you've got it, and, you can do your project and you're fine. Well, you don't get it and that's it, it's over. And we'd invested in it, we'd had other people invest in it, we ploughed everything into it. And, I still have a very young family, and there has to come a point where we say, look, do you know what? I can't keep taking me out of that to run this, where there's very little back. And my kids grew up there. Like, Remy was 8 months old when we got the keys for the first place, Print Manufactory, and so he'd known nothing else, and he was there like every weekend, and he had lots of friends there, and he would play there, and it was incredibly family friendly. And I wouldn't change anything. I don't think like, oh my god, I invested all this time and energy into it and I wasn't being the best mum. Or Remy's probably one of the most social people you'll ever meet, and it's probably because he grew up around all of these. Like, I mean, he's the kind of kid that would just go and sit at somebody's table, start talking to them about Richard III,
whether they like it or not.
Usually not, but there had to be a point, no holidays. And as much as people are like, oh, it's not really a holiday when you've got children, I'm like, yeah, but you still do it, you still go. My kids have never been on holiday abroad, and they've only had like a couple of weeks in Wales. That's it. And I just think there had to come a time where I said, okay, that's enough now.
And it becomes a kind of a lifestyle question, because our children's childhood is actually very short. And we have good reason to pursue our own businesses during that time because of the flexibility, because we want to be fulfilled, because we want to make a difference, because we want to have an impact on the community for whatever reason. But do you feel that the price became too great?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and the thing was, I felt like Kev will follow me to the ends of the earth, like whatever I choose to do, he will support me. He always will. And I said to him last year and the year before, to be honest, I was like, should I just stop? And he was like, just do what you want to do. I'm like, no, I want you to tell me, like, should I just stop? And I think it got to a point I had to make the decision, because it was my decision to make. But I just felt like it's not fair for me to not be putting anything into the pot. Like, I never took any money from Commonground or Print Manufactory, like never. The only money I ever had was from doing things away from it, so teaching or commissions, that kind of thing. And even those,
and that fact is incredible that you kept it going for so long. And it's an absolute act of service. You weren't running a charity. Like, we have to aim to be paid by our businesses.
Yeah. I mean, I was actually paying to go to work. So when I say like I was teaching or I was doing a commission, that money then a lot of the time would go into paying like my staff's wages. So it wasn't even just sometimes it wasn't a case of me not getting paid. It was about me paying to go to work. And as much as, you know, me and my business partner, John, you know, we loved the community that we'd become part of and that we'd helped create. And I loved the nights
and you
that
crowdfunded all that money. So they loved you. As well.
You know, it for us, it was something really important. And when we made the decision to close, we put it on Facebook, and like the comments, the things people said, it was just phenomenal. Like the support, but at the same time, like people knew that we'd done as much as we possibly could, and we tried really, really hard to keep it going. But at the end of the day, I think I had to say, like, I can't not get paid and not have any weekends. There has to come a point where you say that's enough now.
You have 2 children. Yeah. Ray has additional needs, which you can share with us if you want to. And you had lost your mum, which is, the timing is just so fucking unfair.
You know, lost my mum, and so we had childminders and nursery, and it's basically just all of our money. Any money that we had just went straight into that. Like there was nothing left, and it didn't cover what we needed. So we're still running print manufactory, but what I was making would never cover the childcare that I needed. So it was always a case of just bringing the kids to work. That happened a lot, and the joy of having your own business is that you can have your kids with you. But yeah, that's generally what happened, and that in itself makes some things very, very difficult, because, you know, every stage of them being little has its challenges, whether it's the feeding when they're really young or whether it's the entertaining when they're a bit older. But now when I look back on it, I'm so glad. Actually, it was just hard on my own to be working and to be responsible for people's jobs and all the things that go with running a business, as well as little people and their needs and whatnot. It's just hard to mentally balance all of that. But COVID helped. Kev was at home quite a bit, so that was really helpful. And then where we find our problems now is because Remy's 7, nearly 8, and, you know, there's plenty of clubs and things that he can go to. But Ray has got damage to his brain. We're pretty sure that it happened during the birth. But he had hydrocephalus, and the neurosurgeon kind of said that he's got some problems with the white matter. So actually kind of connections between, like, things. So, you know, if we describe Ray's got everything there. It's just kind of how he can communicate it or do it. It's getting from A to B seems to be the problems with him. And he's got autism, but he's completely nonverbal. He can use some sounds, but you certainly can't have a conversation with him. Like, he doesn't understand danger. You know, it's like having a baby that has to be supervised, but with the strength of a very large 6-year-old, because he's a big lad. Very strong. So yeah, and he's at the most phenomenal school. Well, he's in the best place for him. The development and the change in him in the last 2 years has been amazing. But when it comes to the holidays or like after school, I think there's nothing at all. So there's no childcare. Like, even if we wanted it, really, like, it means that from a work point of view, I'm always going to be limited by what I can do. And it is quite funny because earlier on, like just before we started this, you said to me, I can't imagine you're ever going to be a point where you don't have a project to go on to. Like, you'd go off and you'd be in Tesco's and you'd be fine with it. That has crossed my mind. You know, I think about a year ago, I was really kind of disillusioned. I mean, it might have even been 2 years ago, really struggling with everything and thinking, like, I just don't want all of this, the enormity of all of this. And you know, and I was in a place where I had to be really sociable with lots of people, and
which is tiring.
I was so tired. I was like, I'm struggling to pay people, I'm struggling to balance everything, and I'm having to be happy and serve people. And I did start looking to see what other jobs, and I genuinely did look. There was a job in a mortuary.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I was like,
Kate.
I know.
This is the thing about real life. Like, what you have been through in the last 5 years is crazy. When you're pushing a business that feels like you're pushing against a tide, And every morning you have to have that resilience and you have to get up and do it again because you really believe in it. And it shouldn't have to be a passion project. You really feel like you can make it work and you're striving and you're trying all the time. And in that, you know, you've got Remy, but that was a process in itself.
Yeah.
And then you have Ray. I remember you telling me that you were pregnant with him and it happened naturally. And you were just so excited. You're like, I think my body knows what to do now. And it's going to be, you know, you have all that hope having struggled to get pregnant with Remy. And then to have such a traumatic birth and losing your mum and having the pandemic, that's such a lot. And I can fully appreciate why you might have those thoughts. Like, can it just be easier? Can I just be in a bad mood, go and clock on for a shift and stack some shelves and everyone leave me alone? Don't talk to me. Don't ask me any questions. I'll clock out again and you send me some money.
I mean, and that's it. And the thing with the working in the morgue, I genuinely thought, well, I can be unhappy. Like, people will expect me to not be happy if I worked in a place like that. Like,
Kate.
I know, right? And I was just, I genuinely, I was just like, yeah,
You ran out of energy.
Yeah, it was. I think I've been doing so much, and yeah, you just think maybe that's what I should do. I think if I put it down on paper, I've got lots and lots of transferable skills. And I think when I did start thinking about getting like a proper job, you know, I was like, oh, I could do this and, you know, I could do that. But it really does come back to what I could do in terms of childcare. I think running my own business is probably one of the only ways that I can manage.
And this is a struggle all the time, I think. When you become a mum, you know, your identity just completely shifts in that moment. It's such a shock to the system because you are suddenly responsible. And it is literally like a chapter separation. You know, your old life just isn't, it's not going to be like that anymore. So many mothers that I speak to, it is this process of like rediscovering an identity because it's not going to be the same as you had before. But it has to include facets of it. And the facet for Kate Rossin is that she has to have something going on.
Absolutely.
And you've got so many demands on your time, and they're demands that you want to serve. Like, you want to be a present mother and look after your children and be there for them. But there's a bit of old Kate in there that can't go and work in a morgue, surely.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, there's all these conversations about how hard it is to be like a woman as a parent. You know, now it's like, it's the expectation. Not only are you a parent, but you have to do everything. You have to go to work. It's like if I turn around and say, well, actually, I could just be at home. I'd earn the same amount of money that I've been earning for the last, you know, year at Commonground because like I wasn't taking anything home. I would just stay at home and people would be like, what? But you can't not go out to work. Like, you have to work. That's what people do. So I do think there's that that kind of expectation that you have to do it. You can't just be a parent.
Would you like to just be a parent?
Sometimes.
I now feel bad about this because because I've just said I don't see that as you. And obviously,
I think I could probably manage it for a very, very short period of time because it's all well and good, you know, having the right to go out and work and to be treated the same, but we're not treated the same because we still have much bigger social expectations on how we are as a parent. As much as I want to push back against the idea that women should have it all, I couldn't do it. Like, when I was at home after having Remy, I could not stay at home. I couldn't stay in the house. I wanted to be outside. I wanted to be off doing things. And I think that for me, being me is an important part of me being a parent as well. I think I'm the best version of a mum for the children because I'm okay with me. You know, I'm doing the things that I need. And I think it's really important for people. And I'm in a really privileged position to be able to do that. I think, you know, there's lots of people out there that are on their own. They don't have a partner to be able to kind of pick up the slack, to be able to kind of, you know, push forward in being themselves, you know. So I know how lucky I am to be able to do that. But mentally, I have to be working or doing something. Like, I can't just not. I mean, I think I've always said I've got like two modes. I'm either fast asleep or running at 100 miles an hour.
Yeah, it's interesting. Again, this talking about expectation. It's really not about having it all. It's just having the right to choose, right? Because there are women. My mother, she was happy at home with us, and we're so lucky to have had that. She was just in her element, and she's had to grapple with the fact that I'm not.
Yeah.
And then I've had to grapple with the fact that that doesn't mean I love my children less than she loved me.
Yeah.
And it's so complicated. I don't know. There's a lot to explore, but there's not much male input on that. That's a conversation intergenerationally between women.
Yeah.
I know there's male input on a lot of things,
Yeah.
but that's just, it comes down to the individual.
Mm-hmm.
And there are so many different ways to parent, and it's just finding what works. I would be the same. I love my Fridays with the girls, but I'm exhausted mentally at the end of them. And if I had to do then a solo Saturday, a solo Sunday, and I wouldn't be a very good version of me.
No.
I have to have that space for myself to pursue something, kind of like fill your cup back up so you can go again.
Yeah.
Whereas with my mum, she's having her cup filled by just being with us. And there's so much guilt that I feel about that, because I'm just like, well, why aren't I the same?
Mm-hmm.
But we're not all the same, and that's
No.
cool. And I feel awful because I have this expectation that because I know you and I know that you fire off these ideas, and I feel like I'm a bit like that, and perhaps that's why we're friends. But then for me to project that onto you, like, why aren't you being this version of yourself? Because if you say to me, oh, I just feel like for a month I could just zone out, go to bed. And I'm like, no, be the version of you that I know. Because as well, we have to allow each other to change, because life's going to throw curveballs at us.
Yeah.
And we have to adapt.
Yeah. And I think, the month after Commonground closed, so we closed in December, and January was really tough. And obviously it's the middle of winter, and I think I spent like a whole month just not really doing anything. And I did have to kind of get stuff out of the space, we were clearing it out, and that was a mammoth job in itself. But mentally, I know I can't stay in that place for very long. That not doing anything, just... Yeah, so as much as the idea of just want to be... Actually, I'm completely the opposite. I'm far more present as a parent when I'm doing lots of things, because I'm excited and I'm doing my stuff and I'm kind of being me. Whereas actually, if I'm not, then I'm just depressed and don't want to see anybody. And even if that's my children, and that's the place I do not want to ever be in. You're right in terms of that is who I am. Like, I'm not the person who's ever going to just...
I'll stop feeling bad though.
Yeah, you don't have to feel bad.
Stop feeling bad.
No. I think it's just more from a protest point of view. Houses cost so much money, everything costs so much money, that generally both parents, have to be working. But it doesn't mean that you can now afford somebody to come and look after your children. So you come home, you're exhausted because you've been working all day, and then you've got to cook and clean and and do homework and do all the other things that come with being a parent. So it's, yes, you've got it all, but that's not what you asked for at all. You asked for a level playing field, and for a lot of people that just isn't the case. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So what are you doing now?
What am I doing now?
Not working in a morgue.
Not working in a morgue, surprisingly. That didn't work out. So last year, I was approached by Coventry University to open a coffee shop. They were looking for independence. It's a really kind of forward-thinking project where they've taken the kind of big company, so that was just running all of the coffee shops and food outlets within the whole of the university campus, had them finish their contract and approach smaller independents to take on the coffee shops within the different faculties. So we were asked to put a tender together, which we did. So we got the tender, we opened up one of the coffee shops, but it became obvious really quickly that time was just running out on Commonground, and that even this wasn't going to save it. So we made the decision to close and carried on with the space at the university, and then we were asked to take on another space. And then in February we were asked to tender for the space within the Delia Derbyshire building. So the Delia Derbyshire building is the new arts building. So I actually studied my foundation there, and Kev works within that building. And what they've done is they've combined two kind of old brutalist buildings, and they've created one building. So they've built what was an outside space is now a kind of big open atrium, and it's just won the REBA for the West Midlands, and we're parked right in the middle of it. And it's a fantastic space, really beautiful, really open, and we won that tender as well. So that's what we're doing. So I wasn't expecting to be running a coffee shop. That's not the path that I was going to be taking, but that's where I found myself at the moment.
It fits for now.
It fits for now, yeah. I've just been offered a studio up on the top floor in one of the most beautiful studios. So I'm now in a kind of period of time where I'm like, now I'm going back to maybe find myself as an artist / photographer / find out all the things that I've been putting on hold and not had the time or energy to do whilst running Commonground. And even though we had this big art space and studio, which was predominantly for doing that, I never did my own stuff because I was always kind of helping other people or just facilitating the space. Yeah, so that's
time to, yeah, it's a bit of a pivot, isn't it? So you've got a steadier setup with the coffee shop.
Yeah.
But perhaps an opportunity to rediscover a bit more about what you can do creatively, which is very cool.
It is.
Exciting.
And it's not a morgue.
Okay, so tell me, with all this experience that you've garnered as a mum and as a business person and as a creative, what would you tell your 8-year-old self?
My 8-year-old self. Oh, that's a really tough one. It's funny because my 8-year-old self is very much like my 8-year-old son. Like everybody always says, like whenever we go to like family parties and things, and everybody's like, not just that he looks like me, but they're just like, oh my God, he's just like you. Like this is what you were like. I'm like, really? Like at this level? And they're like, yeah, at this level.
Wow.
So it's quite eye-opening. But maybe just do what you want. Do what makes you kind of, happy, and, obviously don't, break the law or do anything like that, but do what you want to do. Don't follow anybody else's path. Follow your own path. And I think it's societal norms of what, working, owning houses or owning certain things, material things. I don't necessarily that makes people happy, and Remy is so full of fun and joy and stuff, and I think I remember not feeling necessarily like that when I was a bit older than him. I would hate to have that taken away from him. Like I want him to have as much of that kind of joy and energy for as long as possible, and I think school and all those kind of things can absolutely take it out of you, especially if you're somebody who's really passionate about stuff. And I mean, I would like to say assertive and shows really good leadership skills and not being bossy, which is what I always get.
Absolutely.
That was what I was.
Yeah,
they
same.
were like, oh, Katie's very bossy. Katie
Same.
is always, I'm like, yeah, well, let's say assertive and showing good leadership.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Remy is full of life. I can definitely see that in you. And I think, I'm a bystander, but to a large extent, you've forged your own path and you've pursued projects that perhaps people were concerned that you shouldn't. You should just go and get yourself a nice job. Oh yeah, like I've definitely had that. Like I think being a photographer was seen as a proper job. That was very much, that's a skill, that's a job. Go and do weddings, that's a profession. Whereas like running the spaces and stuff seems like, wow, maybe you should just stop this now. Just give this up and get a proper job. And I heard that a lot. But yeah, it takes courage to fight against that though, and to continue, because you'll never be criticised by somebody who's doing more than you. Yeah. And you're trying. Yeah. You're just trying a thing that you really care about. And I think that's an impressive and courageous act. And even if in the end it wasn't sustainable, I imagine that Commonground brought a lot of joy to a lot of people. And in its time, it provided a really valuable platform. I hope so. And I think that's something to be very proud of. Yeah. I am really proud of what we did there and what we achieved. It was, something was really new for Coventry. Like Coventry hadn't had someone like that. And, and I am really glad that I tried it. And it wasn't a success in a lot of ways, but it was a success in a lot of ways. And, I'm really happy about kind of all the people that we met and the different groups of people that we've either brought together or, the different kind of artists that have, made connections with each other, and just the friends I've made. I am sad to see it go, but I've made peace with it now. No regrets? No. I mean, I don't have any regrets because I've tried to learn through everything. So I always think that everything has got an opportunity to kind of improve on, not make the same mistakes again. So. And also, what a lesson and what a practical experience to share with your children that they grew up in this space. And I'm sure you've got countless photographs of them in that beautiful space that you created. Yeah. And that, no, mummy is fearless. And mum tried a thing and it didn't work and she got back up and she did another thing. And hopefully they'll take something from that. And like you say, Remy will do what he wants.
Yeah. I think Remy will always do what he wants. I mean, I don't think I need to tell him that. But yeah, I genuinely think, like, my mum said to me, you know, not long after she'd been diagnosed, and she did say about taking risks, and because I remember saying to her, do you think I should do this? Do you think I should open what was Print Manufactory? And she was like, well, you know, you won't know unless you actually do it. And she's always had this thing of taking risks, and, you know, if you can manage it, just do a bit more, because the returns could be much bigger. And I know she's not around physically anymore, but she's definitely encouraging me, or, you know, telling me to stop being so stupid.
Oh, Kate, I have loved this very long conversation. We've covered a lot of ground as always. So thank you so much.
Thank you ever so much for having me. It's been great. Bye.
One of the amazing things about this podcast is that it gives busy mums like me and Kate a chance to have an uninterrupted catch up, and this chat was long overdue. If you have a mum friend that you miss talking to, then I highly recommend starting a podcast so you can schedule in a conversation of your own. Or perhaps just get a coffee date in the diary. Much easier. If you're interested in connecting with Kate, you can find her on Instagram and see some of her beautiful photographs by searching for @depictphoto. Thank you so much for being here. I know your time is precious and I appreciate every single one of you for tuning in today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, rate and review the podcast, because we want as many mums as possible to find us and join in the conversation. If you have thoughts, questions, love letters or even hate mail, please send them my way. I read every single message. For more resources and episode show notes, please visit our website at mummeansbusinesspodcast.com and find us on Instagram at mummeansbusinesspodcast for behind the scenes content and updates. Until next time, I'm wishing you only good things in life and business, and I will speak to you soon.